The warship descended like a blade through the stratosphere, its hull cutting through clouds that shimmered with static discharges. Beneath it, the arena core ignited, illuminating the vast titanium coliseum nestled in the dead center of the neutral zone. Billions watched from every quadrant of the galaxy, broadcasts streamed into palaces and slums alike. This was no mere duel. This was spectacle, a ceremony of dominance. And one of the contenders was already waiting. She stood alone on the arena platform, a solitary figure wrapped in matte black armor that hugged her form without excess. No helmet, no weapons, no entourage, just a young woman. Human, barely more than 5.5 feet tall. Her gaze fixed forward, her expression unreadable. No emblems marked her suit, no flags claimed her. She needed none. Her presence said everything. They called her Deathworlder. Not a name, a classification. A designation whispered by diplomats and warlords, murmured with a blend of reverence and fear. She came from a planet classified Tier 7, lethal environment, evolutionary pressure off the charts, home to a biosphere that killed 90% of its native species before maturation. Gravity 3 times standard. Atmosphere rich in particulate carbon and volatile acids. Everything on her world either adapted or died quickly. She had adapted. Across the arena, the apex warlord emerged. His entrance was a procession. Trumpets of plasma screamed as the hangar doors yawned open. He stepped out slowly, as if the gravity here dared not resist him. 8 feet of engineered perfection, metallic skin fused with living muscle, enhanced by centuries of warborne technology. His limbs bristled with subdermal weapons. His eyes, glowing crimson orbs, locked onto the girl with contempt thinly veiled as curiosity. He bared his fangs in something like a smile. "So," he growled, his voice vibrating the arena walls. "This is the champion they send to face me? A child in skin-tight plastic." The girl said nothing. She didn't move. The crowd, aware of the warlord's record, unbroken across 83 systems, buzzed with expectation. They'd seen him tear through challengers like mist through starlight. Many wondered if this would be a killing too quick to satisfy. "You speak nothing," he pressed, pacing now, deliberately making his massive steps thud across the floor. "Are you mute? Or simply wise enough to know your words would taste bitter as they return to your throat?" Still silence. The cameras zoomed in. Her eyes were open but distant, as though watching something unfold far ahead of the present moment. An involuntary twitch passed across the warlord's jawline, barely perceptible, frustration, perhaps, or recognition of something he didn't yet understand. The announcers filled the silence with commentary, their voices laced with tension. "This, folks, is classic Deathworlder pre-combat meditation," one whispered. "A technique known to precede sudden, decisive violence." Another added, "Some say they see battle in full before it begins, calculating variables beyond our comprehension." The warlord scoffed and cracked his knuckles. The sound echoed with metallic finality. 15 seconds, he declared. "I'll give you that long to pray to whatever primitive deity your pitiful race still believes in." The timer appeared overhead. 15 seconds. It began to count down. The girl closed her eyes. The crowd hushed, as if the galaxy itself paused. The warlord began to pace in a slow arc, measuring her from different angles, perhaps looking for weaknesses, or perhaps trying to unsettle her. She remained utterly still. Not rigid, not tense. Just poised. T-10. A drop of sweat slid down a technician's forehead in the observation deck. One of the warlord's advisors, watching remotely, muttered, "She's not armed. Not even augmented. This isn't a fight. It's a diplomatic suicide." T-7. She inhaled. Just once. Deep. Measured. Her diaphragm expanded subtly under the armored rib plates. Her fingers curled slightly, then relaxed. Not fear. Preparation. T-5. The warlord tensed. His body shifted forward a millimeter. He noticed it and forced himself still again. Had he just been baited? Was the silence itself a tactic? T-3. Her eyes opened. He saw it then. Not fear, not pride, but stillness. Not the absence of movement, but the total mastery of it. She was a coiled storm in human shape, every cell waiting for alignment. He clenched his fists. T-1. The timer vanished. Silence ruled. The warlord lunged. It wasn't a feint, not anymore. He moved with speed that defied his size, a blur of war-forged limbs and kinetic momentum. His fist, larger than her head, descended with enough force to rupture steel. And yet, she was already gone. One breath earlier, she had been standing. One breath later, she was airborne. No scream, no cry, no theatrics. Just velocity. Her left foot pivoted, the right leg extended like a piston drawn by divine geometry. Her motion was not fast, it was perfect, timed, aligned, and sharpened across thousands of hours of lethal necessity. The wind cracked as her heel connected. The Warlord's armor didn't dent. It exploded. The impact drove him backward with a sonic crack, his massive body flung through the air like a rag doll. He crashed into the arena wall with a shuddering crunch that silenced every voice across the galaxy. Smoke curled from where he landed. No movement followed. She landed lightly on the balls of her feet, her breathing unchanged. Her gaze remained forward, dispassionate. She did not look at him. She did not need to. Above, the broadcast timer now read 15 seconds. A pause. Then a voice over the intercom, hesitant. Combat concluded. The Colosseum erupted. But she was already walking away. Her dropship hissed open, silently inviting her return. She didn't look back. Not because she didn't care, but because there was nothing left to see. Her message had been delivered. Not in words. Not in warnings. In a single, perfect act of violence, she had redrawn the lines of power. Every warlord, diplomat, and monarch watching now knew. The Deathworlders were not myth. They were the future, and she had only just begun. He didn't rise. Not immediately. The apex warlord, whose name had once shaken planets into submission, lay crumpled in a man-shaped dent embedded into the wall of the arena. Smoke wafted from his scorched armor, its integrity compromised by the unthinkable, a single strike from a barefooted human girl. Emergency drones hovered above him, scanning for signs of life, unsure whether to intervene. None dared move without orders. The crowd held its breath, each passing second a blade scraping across nerve endings. Then his hand twitched. It wasn't much, a slight flex of metallic fingers, but enough to send a jolt through the arena. The drones backed off. The crowd gasped. The girl didn't turn. Her back remained to him, as if declaring the fight over. As if his survival, his suffering, had no bearing on her anymore. She knew he wasn't dead. The warlord surged upright with a feral snarl, fragments of wall clattering around him. Sparks flared from exposed circuitry along his shoulder, but his eyes burned hotter than before. Not with fury. Fury had passed. This was something different. Cold. Focused. His pride had bled out with that kick. What remained was instinct. A predator shamed before its pack. He stepped forward, and the floor quaked. She paused. The girl turned slightly, just enough to face him again. The crowd leaned in. "You're not done?" she asked, voice calm, unhurried. He responded with a sound that wasn't quite a word, more a growl wrapped around humiliation. His footfalls thudded closer, deliberate, controlled. Gone was the mockery from earlier. No taunts. No theatrics. He now regarded her the way a war-hardened general regards an uncharted weapon. Dangerous. Unpredictable. Worthy of caution. "You could have killed me," he said. "I still could." That answer hung between them, heavy as gravity. For a moment, even he hesitated. He'd never hesitated before. Not against Titan beasts. Not in the genocidal marches across the Cinder Vault. But something in her gaze unraveled certainties he'd built his empire on. He moved again, faster this time, not charging but weaving, fainting with years of muscle memory. She shifted her stance an inch. That was enough. His strike, a spinning elbow laced with hydraulic torque, passed harmlessly beside her cheek. She hadn't even leaned back. She had already moved. A parry. Her fingers slid across his forearm like wind over water, redirecting the blow without brute force. She struck again, this time not with a kick, but a palm, flat and centered, slamming into his sternum. The impact reverberated not through armor, but through his core systems. He staggered. Systems blinked. Not just pain, disruption. She'd aimed for more than his body. "Why?" he hissed, recovering. "Why not end it?" She stared at him, and something flickered behind her eyes. Not mercy, not pity, calculation. "Because I want you to understand what just happened," she said softly, "and that you had no part in it." The words sliced deeper than any blade. He attacked again, Less elegant, more raw. Fury returned, but it was unfocused. Desperate. A cluster of blows designed to overwhelm. She retreated 2 steps, then held her ground. Each attack deflected with minimalist precision. A twist of a wrist. A nudge with the elbow. No wasted movement. The spectators watched, enthralled not by violence, but by its mastery. She was not reacting. She was controlling. Every gesture dictated the terms of the exchange. He, for all his engineered ferocity, danced to her rhythm. "How did you learn this?" he gasped, breath laboring now. Her answer came between movements. "By surviving a planet that teaches you stillness is the only way to remain alive." A flash. He lashed out with a concealed blade from his knee, trying to catch her mid-reply. She bent at the last moment, driving a strike into the nerve junction at his thigh. His leg buckled. He fell to one knee. The crowd, sensing finality, rose to their feet. She didn't move to finish him. Not yet. Instead, she stood over him, expression unreadable. "You think strength is violence," she said. "That dominance is earned by conquering the weak. But you've never had to coexist with something that doesn't care whether you live or die. You've never been prey." He spat blood. "And you think one victory changes the galaxy?" "No," she said. "I think you believing that is why you lost." He growled, surged again, a final, reckless lunge. She didn't stop him. He made it halfway. Then she stepped sideways, pivoted on her heel, and swept his supporting leg. His body crashed to the ground, chest first, and this time she didn't wait. Her foot came down in a controlled stomp, not brutal, but precise, onto the small of his back, pinning him. He struggled. She applied weight. He froze. Systems warning. Power compromised. Core integrity at risk. He couldn't move, not without shattering his own spinal rig. Defeat settled over him like ash. Silence returned. The girl looked skyward. Above, hundreds of orbital drones recorded every angle. Her voice, when it returned, was quiet, intimate, yet broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. "This is what your strength has built," she said. "A throne of fear, a legacy of silence. But all it takes to unmake it is one well-placed kick." With that, she stepped off him, walked backward, never turned her back again, not out of fear, but as a gesture of awareness. She knew what kind of creature she'd just humbled. He didn't rise again, not because he couldn't, but because he finally understood the weight of what had occurred. She exited the arena without applause. The crowd erupted behind her, but it no longer mattered. The performance was never for them. This was war distilled, not of nations or fleets, but of philosophy, and hers had proven superior. Yet as she stepped onto her ship, something gnawed at her mind. A moment, not during the battle, but before. That pause, the stillness. In those 15 seconds, something else had stirred. A presence she hadn't accounted for. Watching. Not the crowd. Not the warlord. Something deeper. She frowned slightly. Then the hatch sealed behind her, and she was gone. The war wasn't over. It had just shifted. The ship cut through the black between systems, a silent vector of intent propelled by ion drift and decisions unspoken. Inside its hull, she sat in the command pod, hands resting idle on her thighs, eyes closed. Not asleep, she never slept. Not truly. The death world had trained that out of her. What she did was different. Stillness. Stillness so complete that her pulse barely registered. Stillness that let her listen to the quiet hum of every servo in the deck plates, the infinitesimal shift of cosmic radiation skimming the hull, the whisper of something else. It was that whisper again. A pressure not quite sound, not quite thought. A knowing. It had started during those 15 seconds of silence before she shattered the warlord. The pause was deliberate, yes, but something had entered the space with her. Something ancient. Watching. Measuring. And now it followed her. She opened her eyes. "Galen," she said. A soft chime replied. The ship's voice was smooth, male, lightly amused. "Yes, Commander." "Any foreign transmissions?" "Non-harmonic, non-verbal, off-spectrum?" "No anomalous activity detected on any scannable band." She stared at the console. "That doesn't mean it isn't there." "I concur. But it does mean it doesn't want to be seen." A beat of silence passed. Then she nodded. "Log it. Background presence. Origin, unknown. Character, observant. Emotion, neutral. Log," Galen said. "I take it you're not celebrating." She almost smiled. "Celebrations for people who think the fight is over." Galen didn't respond for a moment. Then, he sent a transmission. That got her attention. Patch it. The screen lit up, revealing the face of the Apex Warlord. Not live, a recording. His eyes, no longer fire but coals. Cooling. Burned out. His body was braced in a medical cradle, armor removed. He looked smaller. Mortal. I speak this once, and only for you, he said. Because I have seen something I do not understand. And the only way to learn is to speak with those who have bested me. She raised an eyebrow. Your strike, he continued. It was not strength. Not the kind I know. It wasn't hatred. It wasn't vengeance. So what was it? She leaned forward. It was an answer to a question I hadn't asked, the Warlord said. And now I ask it. What made you? The message ended. No return address. No beacon. She sat still for a long time. Finally, she rose and walked to the observation dome at the rear of the ship. A sphere of transparent alloy curved around her, displaying a yawning canvas of stars. Somewhere out there, he was waiting. Not for revenge, but for understanding. Her fingers tapped the glass. I was made by death, she whispered. By something your kind can't even name. Beneath her, the ship adjusted course slightly, aligning with new coordinates. She didn't ask Galen why. She already knew. The whisper had shifted. It was louder now. Closer. The planet hung in space like a bruise, a mottled orb of reds and grays, swirling with electrical storms and patches of iridescent green. There was no name in the stellar charts. No record of prior contact. It shouldn't exist. But there it was. Waiting. She stepped into the drop pod. Her armor formed around her like memory. Not for protection. For trust. Every joint, every clasp, was familiar as breath. She didn't speak. The ship didn't ask. The pod ejected with a quiet thunk, sending her hurtling toward the unknown. Atmosphere tore at her hull. Lightning struck the metal in furious succession. She descended through layers of storm and static, until suddenly, everything stilled. The pod pierced the cloud layer and entered a clearing sky above black jungle. The pod struck ground. She stepped out and waited. The jungle didn't move. No sound. No wind. Even the insects here seemed to obey the silence. She walked. Branches bent away before her, as if the forest didn't want to be touched. She passed through tangled vines and root webs shaped like bones. Each step forward felt like descending deeper into the memory of something terrible. Then she found the crater. It was not large, but it was old. In its center stood a monolith. Black. Perfectly smooth. 10 meters tall. It hummed without sound. She approached, feeling her body resist, not from fear, but awe. And then it spoke. Not in words. Not in images. In feeling. Recognition. You were there, she said aloud, eyes wide. The whisper answered not with confirmation, but with projection. A memory not hers. The death world. Her birth. Her first kill. Her first loss. The second time she died. And the thing that brought her back. Not science. Not cloning. Something older. Something from beneath the crust of her planet. A presence that watched and measured all life on the surface, and chose one to speak through. It had spoken through her. The monolith pulsed. Now she understood. The Warlord hadn't lost because she was stronger. He had lost because he represented an idea that the universe itself had begun to outgrow. One of control, conquest, of making others bend. She had become something else. A herald of the transition. Not peace. Not war. Evolution. The monolith offered one final gift, a glimpse forward. She saw herself, not alone, but leading. Not armies, but catalysts. Beings like her. Changed. Adapted. And something rising to stop them. The whisper faded. She turned and walked back toward the pod. This time, the jungle didn't part. It bowed. When she returned to orbit, Galen's voice came through. Transmission received. Broadcast in 8 quadrants. Multiple species are responding. To what? To your fight, Galen said. To your silence. To what followed. She nodded. What's the first destination? Galen answered with a list of coordinates. She looked at the stars. One fight had ended. But the war, the real one, was beginning. Not of weapons. Not even of ideologies. But of survival. Of what kind of life had the right to lead the next age of the galaxy. And she would be its first question.